Hi everyone and welcome to week 4. This week we are looking at government policy, drivers and principles. To assist with your learning, I will discuss how different scales of government affect natural resource management and how their interactions influence management and associated behaviour. I will use the management of the Australian Alps as a case study. The Australian Alps cover over 1.6 million hectares of public land contained in 11 national parks and nature reserves across Victoria, New South Wales and the ACT. There are also several state forests and ski resorts, which all patchwork together into an elaborate management system across local and state governments. The Australian Alps have hundreds of species of plants and animals, and several are endemic to the area. Tourism is a large driver in the Alps and is responsible for thousands of jobs and local economies. The Australian Alps are also an important ecosystem service to Australia, as they support approximately 29% of the inflows of the Murray-Darling Basin. Because the Australian Alps span across multiple state lines, jurisdiction varies between different government agencies or areas of administration. Park staff and government departments work in cooperation with partner agencies to manage the area. These are just some of the various agencies active in the Australian Alps. As an example of how different scales of government interact to influence management and behaviour, let's examine the structure in Victoria. Parks Victoria's responsibilities are agreements set between Parks Victoria, the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, the Department of Transport, and the Minister for Energy, Environment and Climate Change. The Minister receives advice on the administration of the Parks Victoria Act from the National Parks Advisory Council. As you can see, multiple levels of government trickle down to influence the management of our parks, and it quickly becomes very overwhelming. If the Australian Alps are so significant and protected by multiple levels of government and policy, why haven't they been protected from development and continue to suffer? It is imperative to understand how decisions related to the environment are made and whether the policies and processes created lead to environmentally and socially sustainable outcomes. Bennett and Satterfield's principles of environmental governance may have the answer. One of these is equity. Equitable environmental governance recognises, respects, and is inclusive of the perspectives, knowledge systems, values, cultures, and rights of diverse stakeholders. Because the objective of protected areas allows for recreation, governing bodies have permitted development to uphold local economies and tourism activities to remain equitable. The Australian Alps are rich with cultural heritage and resources, and permitting associated activities has come at the cost of the environment. There are multiple ski resorts in the Australian Alps, and they are responsible for the management of their environment. Although they are held accountable and report to government bodies, their investment in tourism and development has significantly skewed their approach. Bennett and Satterfield include effectiveness as a principle and measure it by the presence of skills, resources, and informed decision-making. Unfortunately, most of the ski resorts' skills and resources are focused elsewhere, and their environmental practices can fall short. However, other levels of government influencing the area have changed a vital aspect of one particular ski resort. The Snowy Scheme is a hydroelectric project that has evolved from the 1940s to the current end-to-end integrated energy business. The business was a collaboration between both Victorian and New South Wales governments, and as of 2019, Thredbo powers all resort operations with renewable energy. This collaboration of government has harnessed a natural resource and resulted in better practices by environmental managers at smaller scales. Another great example of how different levels of government and policy affect environmental management is controlling invasive species. The Australian Alps have significant problems with invasive species, most prominently deer and feral horses, or brumbies as they are affectionately known. The management of these animals differs significantly depending on which states they reside in. Parks Victoria has permitted a deer hunting season within park boundaries, however New South Wales has not. Multiple agencies, including the National Parks Association of New South Wales, Nature Conservation Council of New South Wales, and the Humane Society International, have prevented this legislation from passing Parliament. What effect has this had on the Australian Alps? Decisions at the top level of the system alter the system's state due to panicky. The top-level government decision to underutilise the public to reduce invasive species numbers is an example of how changes in one cycle of the panicky changes the behaviours of others within the system. Invasive species numbers have exploded in the Australian Alps and have decimated some of the native animals, such as the broad-toothed rat and alpine bog skink. The variances between state legislation goes against many theories in successful environmental management. For example, The Queensland Government has noted a goal of natural resource management to be integration across regions, issues and agencies. Selberg et al. Note that collaborating to achieve common objectives is essential to resilience planning. Although there are some differences between the way the states manage the Australian Alps, the Australian Alps Liaison Committee was formed in 1986 to ensure management as one biogeographical area. Victoria, New South Wales, the ACT and the Australian Government all signed a Memorandum of Understanding to manage the Alps regardless of borders. This helped unify objectives and goals to protect the landscape. This interaction and agreement between governments has been significant to the environmental management of the Alps. Some achievements of this partnership include aerial surveys of feral horse populations, improving community connectedness, and increasing involvement of Indigenous groups in protecting their cultural importance in the area. The publication of their annual reports keeps the committee accountable to stakeholders and other agencies. Despite a complex system of various managers, agencies and stakeholders interacting together, there is one level of government that will continue to influence the whole system. The Australian Government's decision to continue to invest in fossil fuels and cause massive contributions to climate change will severely impact the Australian Alps' resiliency. It is clear that interacting levels of government have a significant impact on environmental management. I look forward to hearing your discussion on this topic in the discussion forums this week. Thank you.